Esther and Ben from Capital City Unity. Some of you know that Esther is the author of a very popular book that you can find on Amazon, From Donuts to Potatoes, which has some amazingly popular reviews. Esther truly has helped so many people. Did you know, and maybe you did if you tuned in early, that Esther has over 8,000 followers on her Facebook page? Esther's Nutritional Journey. I mean, I remember when you were so happy to hit 100, Esther. So for me, Esther embodies Jesus' statement to us. The kingdom of God is within you. So Esther's talk today is entitled, Be Anxious in Nothing. And Esther, I'm turning over the mic to you, dear one.
Oh, thank you so much, Claudia. You're bringing tears to my eyes, so I will try to sober up so I can give this little talk. But first of all, I want to thank the board of Capital City Unity for giving me this opportunity to share my story with you. I am honored and excited. Well, it was almost 2 years ago that Marty wanted to include wisdom of the congregation into some of our services. That allowed members of the congregation to share their stories. Lila, Jackie, and I were on the first panel on April 7th, just 2 years ago, 2019, where we each shared how we received our healing individually, but through different modalities. Later in October of that year, Ben and I were in India and missed the service where Sally, Dawn, and Janet shared their history of being in unity for a combination of 180 years. What a rich heritage they all enjoyed for most of their lives. As I listened to that rebroadcast on YouTube, I was humbled by the depth of experience they have had in learning about the power of knowing that Christ is within us, not out there in a cloud somewhere. Now, a little bit of my church history. I, on the other hand, was raised in a blended family. No, my parents hadn't been married before. They just came from different religious backgrounds. My maternal grandparents were devout Quakers, and my grandmother had told me stories about how they sat in the silence until the Spirit moved someone to speak. As Marty pointed out in that October 2019 church service, Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church when it was believed that we, as a people, could approach God directly. We didn't need a pope or a priest to intercede. Then the Quakers came along. They did away with all clergy. Marty went on to say that in unity, we are all ministers, blessed with different gifts, which make up our congregation. Then there was my father's side of the family. His parents came to America in the early 1900s as Lutheran German immigrants. Through the influence of my grandmother's sister, they became members of the Assembly of God denomination here in California. For all of you who are not familiar with that denomination, it is one of many churches collectively called Pentecostals. Wow, that was a big switch from the way my mother was raised, sitting in the silence, to having an orchestra, singing and clapping our hands, and an occasional amen or hallelujah from someone in the congregation. My parents met at Glad Tidings Bible Institute in San Francisco, and they both became ordained ministers in the Assembly of God denomination. I was surprised to learn that back then women could be ordained. They were married in 1929 after my mother's graduation, and almost immediately became pastors in Colorado. I was born in 1943, and by that time, my parents had left the ministry and my father was in business here in Sacramento, a different kind of ministry. During my childhood, we were very involved in the church. We attended Sunday school, we attended services on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, And if there was a revival, we would go every night. We also had family devotions at home after dinner. At the young and tender age of just before I was 6, I attended daily vacation Bible school at Bethel Temple, now called Capital Christian Center here in Sacramento, and I gave my heart to Jesus. I remember skipping home 6 blocks away down W Street, telling my 7-year-old brother Paul, "You ought to try it. It feels good." From that time on, I was a believer and followed the tenets of that faith. At the age of 14, in the summer of 1958, I got to sing in the Billy Graham Crusade Choir when he came to Sacramento. You see, my father was on the steering committee, and I got to meet Billy Graham and have him autograph my Bible. He wrote Philippians 1, verse 6 after his signature, which read, "He who began," it's going to be crying, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." And that is true for all of us. A year later, I attended Canyonville Bible Academy, a Christian boarding school in Canyonville, Oregon, for my last 2 years of high school. I loved being able to participate in all of the school activities, not like when I attended Sacramento High School, where I didn't go to shows or go to dances. It's kind of funny because at school in Canyonville, we used to chat, "A Rudy Toot Toot and a Rudy Toot Toot. We're the girls from the Institute. We don't chew and we don't smoke and we don't go with the boys who do." And we'd say, "We don't have any boyfriends." Well, you might wonder, after all of this history, what was my bridge to unity? Well, after going through a divorce and then returning to Cal State for a degree in psychology, I no longer felt saved on Thursday and would be ready for, oh, wait, I skipped something here. I no longer felt like I belonged in a church which frowned on divorce. It was at that time that I was invited by my friend Sue from junior high school to attend a unity service at Christ Unity back on L Street. I loved the silence. I loved the meditations. I loved having Dorothy and Phil as co-pastors, and I really liked the way they took the offering. We give in love because we love to give. Wow. There was no guilt trip or fundraising, and I liked that. I also remember attending a candlelight service on Christmas Eve and learned that even Judas had a place in the celebration. One day, my father was concerned about me attending what I am sure he must have thought was a cult. He took me out for lunch to explore the topic. It was a special day. I had a chance to tell him all of the positive effects that unity was having on my life. I told him I no longer felt saved just on Sunday night after an emotionally charged service, or wondered if I was still saved on Thursday and would be ready for the rapture or the second coming of Christ if it were to happen. After my lengthy explanation, I said, "So, Dad, what do you think?" Without conceding that he approved, he simply said, "I think you'd make a good salesman." That was as close to a father or Abraham blessing I ever received. No more questions, no more doubts. After so many years in church, I do realize that sermons or talks are supposed to have a title or use a verse from the Bible. This year, my affirmation has been, "Be anxious in nothing." It's from Philippians 4:6. "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." To me, this is unity at its core. What we think about, we bring about. We are spiritual or mind beings in a physical body. Once I realized that the Spirit of God was within me and that I didn't have to beg for what I wanted or needed, I felt relieved. I was no longer anxious. We are one and part of each other. There can be no separation. In Romans 8, we read, we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. And in verse 38, I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death nor life, neither angels, neither demons, which I now see as faulty thinking, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. What's there not to love about that? Talk about blessed assurance. I learned that I am not only a child of God, but I am made in his image. He, she, or it dwells within me, and I can trust Christ's Spirit within me to take one day at a time and be of service to others by shedding love all around. Then I wanted to mention my healing. Well, some of you have known me in a previous incarnation. When Reverend Phil Pearson performed our marriage on August 9th, 1989, following a noontime meditation in the chapel on L Street, it was cheap and I didn't want to pay for a big wedding. I weighed well over 200 pounds. We both did. We were what might be called a matched pair. In that April 7th, 2019 church service where I told of my healing from the food addiction at the age of 72, I shared what a wonderful transformation this was for me. Not only did I lose 130 pounds, restore my health, eliminate all medications and eyeglass prescriptions, I became an advocate for eating a plant-based diet. By that time, I had started a support group on Facebook called Esther's Nutritional Journey, where I post a word of inspiration each day to inspire members to know that they too can change their lives and reverse disease at any age. I never dreamed that at the age of 72, I would find a passion for spreading the good news. When members suggested I write a book, I asked them, why should I write a book with a collection of these words when I give them to you freely every day and it costs you nothing? Well, the response was encouraging, and I'm pleased to say that it was just 1 year ago this month that I submitted my manuscript to Balboa Press. And even before having the title or the details worked out, it was amazing that my book was in the hands of my readers a few weeks later on March 4th. I mean, that is amazing. The clever title of From Donuts to Potatoes, my 366-day journey on a plant-based diet, came to me in the night when I thought of how Ben and I met in his donut shop, but our journey had now taken us from eating donuts to eating potatoes as the staple of our new diet. This whole turn of events has put my story on the cover of Woman's World magazine, given me many interviews on podcasts, on YouTube, and at vegetarian gatherings, and the joy of serving others just keeps expanding. I still write a new word each day in Esther's Nutritional Journey and post photos of everything I eat. This makes the journey easier for new followers of the McDougall program for maximum weight loss, the book I used to redirect my path. I also post daily Word from Unity on my personal Facebook page each day. As Marty pointed out, we are all ministers. Some of us share our voice in music, some by volunteering, and some by giving lessons, and all of us by supporting our church during this time of social isolation. We're all part of the body. That's interesting that Claudia in her meditation showed her little hand, so we're all part of that body. And it's my intention to let others know that what has worked for both me and Ben in restoring our health at even an advanced age. I am so happy that we got to take a trip to Unity Village with Reverend Sheree Larkin and others from this very congregation. That experience gave me more depth information about the beginnings of Unity, and it was a thrill to sit in silence in the chapel named for our very own Dorothy Pearson. Learning more about our roots was important. It wasn't until I was returning a book to a friend that I made a serendipitous discovery. My friend Peggy had loaned me her book by Dr. Will Tuttle called The World Peace Diet. It's also subtitled Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. I don't know if you can see that. I never got around to reading it and decided I wanted to return it before more time passed. I brought it with me to church one Sunday, since we would be seeing Peggy for lunch after the service. Just for the fun of it, I opened it up to the middle of the book to read a page while Ben drove. There are no accidents, right? Well, right there in front of my eyes, I read a story about Unity's co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, being vegetarians. I was shocked. Why had I not heard this before? It is true that I had only attended Sunday services and had not taken any in-depth classes, but since this was so important to me now, I had to investigate. I found the Unity magazine from 100 years ago online. There I read the statements of faith, which included number 29. We believe that all life is sacred and that man should not kill nor be a party to the killing of animals for food. Also, that cruelty, war, and wanton destruction of human life will continue as long as men kill animals for food. Wow, that felt so much stronger than just saying they were vegetarians. Then I dug a little deeper and learned that this statement had been removed. So of course I wanted to know who removed it, when, and why. I felt like a detective. I listened to lectures by Tom Witherspoon given in 1981 when he was the editor of the Unity magazine. I learned that the Fillmores did not even become vegetarians until 1895, when Charles was 41. Harry Church worked for them as a printer and was a Seventh-day Adventist and put a guilt trip on them. It sunk in. In 1927, Charles Fillmore even penned a tract which addressed the idea of not eating meat. When I discovered that number 27 of the statements was removed, my ammunition was gone. I learned that at some point, it was determined that the movement did not want there to be any barriers to those wanting to be truth students who may have self-eliminated themselves if they thought vegetarianism was required. Then my growth really developed. I realized that in Unity, we all have choices. We all come from different backgrounds and our paths vary. We all have come into our life in stages and into our light. And just because this lifestyle has worked so miraculously for me and throngs of others, preaching is less convincing than simply demonstrating the truth. Unity was never intended to be a church to replace any of our individual roots. In fact, in the beginning, services were actually held on Sunday afternoon so they wouldn't conflict with other church services. It is a school of Christianity. We are all seekers of truth. We gather together to experience our oneness with God, who is ever present. The most important commandment is to love the Lord our God with all our hearts, minds, and souls, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. It's interesting that that too was included unannounced in Claudia's meditation. Thank you, Claudia. It is no longer about converting people to any ideology. It is not whether or not one eats meat. It is by grace and love that we come to that knowingness that we are all family. Judgments have no place in my life, and I have gotten off my high horse of self-righteousness to learn that love doesn't demand its own way, is patient, and always sees the Christ spirit in everyone. I encourage all of you to demonstrate your truth. So many of you have years and years of depth in your experience and are spreading love wherever you go. Whatever is your gift, use it. Let's work together to heal ourselves and our planet. Let's not be anxious in nothing, but in everything give thanks. Thank you again for trusting me with this opportunity to share my good news. I wanted to add that when I was in 4th grade, my school teacher said, "Esther, you will be a missionary someday." My 6th grade teacher wrote, "Esther, you will grow up to be a fine woman if you learn not to emulate other women by talking so much." I'm still learning. But I think I can now answer my grandmother Kern's question. Esther, what is your gift? Reverend Phil Pearson has taught us all about the 12 powers of man, and I think I have been blessed with a surplus of zeal, and it is a balancing act for sure. My biggest joy is sharing how this has changed my life and given me a purpose just when I thought I might be ready to turn out the lights. I no longer have to be in the future and sing, "When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be," or "When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there." Because heaven is here in our minds, we get to live in the present, be the creators of our story, and get to sing songs that reflect our joy today. Let's sing one of Phil's joy songs as we celebrate the life that is within all of us. I think Gordon is ready to set up one of my favorites. Every little cell in my body is happy.
Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is healthy and well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is healthy and well.